This is John Swin of exposeyourenemy.com. Okay, I'm going to try something a bit different with this video. I'm going to take a look at my early videos on Les Wexner. These video files were created and published in May of 2017. This is from a time before there was any sort of community looking into Jeffrey Epstein. This was before anyone wrote a book on the subject. This is well before Jeffrey Epstein was arrested in 2019 and the whole subject blew up. You get the point. So the first video I ever published was all about the network of people and organisations, etc. that assisted Donald Trump becoming the United States President. The video about to be shown starts off as a follow-up to information I was covering. I had discovered some of the Schedule B forms, which are documents required for non-profit organisations to disclose information about significant donors. The Centre for Security Policy was one of these organisations. Some of the details of the Schedule B submission was missing, so I investigated further. So let's take a look at this first video. Okay, so this image on your screen, this is taken from the Centre for Security Policy 2013 Schedule B 990 form. As you can see, there's these anonymous donations, but the address is given. So what I did, I tried to find out if I could discover who made the anonymous donations. So I came up with this from loopnet.com and tried to look at the businesses that have offices in a building to see if anything stood out to me and could possibly be linked to the Centre for Security Policy. This is what I come up with, and then if you go down the list, this is what I found. Israel Project Inc. As you can tell, there was a lack of transparency on who contributed the donations referred to. I discovered that they came from Israel Project and or B'nai B'rith. What's the difference really, you know? Feel free to speculate why the Centre for Security Policy wouldn't want to disclose that information. The donations themselves are in that FARA territory, let's say. You have CSP, who are operated by the most unhinged national security hawks and shills for the defence industry. They are taking money from obvious Israeli fronts. It's kind of like the situation I covered in the Road to Bombing Iran video, where the UAE and Saudi Arabia were giving money to the Foundation for the Friends of Democracy, FDD, which Frank Gaffney, the man in charge of CSP, is on the advisory board. And we know, of course, that UAE and Saudi Arabia are not democracies. As you all know, Israel is the only democracy. So sorry, I shouldn't laugh. Anyway, let's continue on. Okay, so this is the Powerbase website, and this is the Israel Project page. Well, this is interesting. This is for Wexner analysis. In 2003, a document prepared for pro-Israel activists by the Luntz research companies was leaked to the Electric Intifada. That spells out the tactics that Israel and its US advocates should use to maintain support for Israel and its hardline policies. A document entitled Wexner Analysis Israel Communication Priorities 2003 counsels pro-Israel advocates to keep invoking the name of Saddam Hussein and to stress that Israel was always behind American efforts to rid the world of this ruthless dictator and liberate their people. Despite his solid support for Israel and Ariel Sharon, the document warns pro-Israel advocates not to contemplate or praise President Bush. At the same time, he acknowledged that Yasser Arafat has been a great asset because he looked the part of a terrorist. The installation of Mahmoud Abbas as Palestinian Prime Minister and potential replacement for Arafat comes at the wrong time, because he has the potential to improve the image of the Palestinians, and that could put the onus on Israel to return to the negotiations. The document advises supporters of Israel to appear to affect a balanced tone, but admits that in arguing for Israel policies, the illegal settlements are Achilles' heel, for which there is no good defense. The document was commissioned by the Wexner Foundation, a private foundation that funds, among other pro-Israel initiatives, Tagline Birthright, a program that pays for young American Jews to take free trips to Israel. And the Wexner Foundation is of course named after Leslie Wexner. Wexner is a Jewish-American billionaire businessman. He is the co-founder and chairman of Limited Brands, L Brands for short, a retail and marketing conglomerate that included major brands as Victoria's Secret, Bath & Body Works, and Abercrombie & Fitch. Wexner retained Jeffrey Epstein as his financial manager from 1987 to 2007 and was initially the main client of Epstein's money management firm. In July 1991, Wexner granted Epstein power of attorney. That is how close they were. That is something you'd usually only give to a family member. I assume Wexner saw Epstein as a protege or a son. Wexner was a protege of Max Fisher and A. Alfred Taubman, and continued on their support of pro-Israel causes. I made a video covering Max Fisher that is well worth watching. Taubman's contact details were listed in Epstein's black address book. Others have speculated that Wexner and Epstein's relationship was sexual as well.
Do you consider yourself to be bisexual? No. Okay. In any event, you did develop a sexual relationship with Leslie Wexner at some point in time. Is that true? No.
Epstein was also instated as a trustee on the board of the Wexner Foundation. So we have Wexner, who is this billionaire who has made a lot of money due to the American system and has given him a wonderful life, and yet he is a huge supporter of another country. He's financing these Wexner analysis and Wexner Foundation operations solely focused on Jewish-only causes. He's using his money to create and direct the use of these pro-Israel, pro-Iraq war and anti-Palestinian talking point throughout the networks of influence, while discouraging any praise or support to be given to the guy who launched the war that they support. So they don't want to be associated with the negative reaction and consequences to the war that they want, or be publicly associated with the decision to go to war. They just want all the benefits and none of the consequences. Looks like they were trying to cover up their influence, much like the donations to CSP were an attempted cover-up under Schedule B 990 form. We only know about the Wexner analysis because it was leaked, and we only know about the anonymous donations to CSP because Eli Clifton obtained the Schedule B form via a Freedom of Information request, I believe. Oh, and before I forget, Les Wexner was listed among the wealthiest donors to the Zionist project by Netanyahu during his 2007 campaign. Now let's continue on with the video. In 2016, he donated over $2 million to Republican establishment super PACs that supported Jeb Bush and John Kasich. He is ranked number 6 of the top individual contributors to federal-focused 527 organizations in the 2016 election cycle. So we can see Wexner wanted to inflict the United States with another Bush presidency. I guess he was very satisfied with what Jeb's brother had done with the war on terror and what he didn't do, tax the super rich out of existence. Maybe even more disturbing than this is Les Wexner's relationship with the convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. According to the Wexner Foundation website, Mr. Wexner has a profound interest in the development of tomorrow's leaders through the works of Harvard University's Center for Public Leadership. Mr. Wexner was inaugurated by Harvard University into the Society of John Harvard Fellows and serves as a visiting lecturer at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. After the revelations of Wexner's relationship with Epstein came to light in the mainstream media, including allegations that Wexner had participated in sex with a minor at the request of Epstein, as well as other allegations that he enabled Epstein's criminal behavior and ignored complaints against Epstein abusing his relationship with Wexner to recruit victims. There are also allegations dating back 30 years made by Maria Farmer against Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell that took place at one of Wexner's Ohio residences. Epstein was also accused of posing as a Victoria's Secret talent scout. A California model named Alicia Arden claimed Epstein assaulted her after luring her back to a Santa Monica hotel in 1997. Yet Wexner turned a blind eye when it was brought to his attention. It would be another decade after Epstein was first arrested on child molestation charges before Wexner finally cut ties. You may have thought that Harvard would have cut ties with Wexner. Well, they didn't. It was the Wexner Foundation that decided to cut ties with Harvard in solidarity with Israeli billionaire Idan Ofer and his wife Batia after they quit their positions on the Harvard Executive Board in protest, stating, quote, "We denounce those who seek to place blame on the people of Israel for the atrocities committed by the terrorist organization Hamas," unquote. I tried to find some evidence to substantiate the allegations made by the author's joint statement, but couldn't find anything. Meanwhile, the Wexner Foundation cited the, quote, "dismal failure of Harvard's leadership to take a clear and unequivocal stand against the barbaric murders of innocent Israeli civilians by terrorists last Saturday," unquote. These ties being cut seem coordinated and done so publicly that it seems like a publicity stunt. Firstly, we have to question why so many powerful and well-connected pro-Israel people have cultivated such ties to a traditionally WASP institution. And was their association part of a Zionist billionaire infiltration operation supported by the Israeli state? Was financial pressure being used against the institution to fall in line and make public statements pushing pro-Israel talking points before any real investigation into October the 7th had taken place? We later found out that a host of the sensationalist claims made against Hamas that were and still are being pushed by pro-Israel propagandists were unfounded. The question of why would they care so much about Harvard's response to a terrorist attack in Israel needs to be asked. Surely, the intent of donating money to the institution is to ensure the facilities and programs have the finances to operate and produce results. The intent of donating money to the institution surely must come into question when funding is cut over such issues. The Israeli state under Netanyahu and some of its loyal supporters in the United States have been ultra-focused on student support for the BDS movement on university campuses. The Israeli state carried out Project Butterfly to target such students and has received little attention. Other pressure groups, such as the well-funded Canary Mission, has operatives profiling student protesters and combing through their social media posts for any dirt they can find, as well as any personal information, and publicising it, doxing the peaceful protesters. Canary Mission is also used as an intel gathering arm to ban activists from entering Israel. Israel On-Campus Coalition is another Israeli spy operation, carrying out similar work for the State of Israel. You have to question how much of an influence all this financing of university institutions by pro-Israel billionaires is having on universities, turning a blind eye to these blatant spying operations and putting their students in danger of foreign actors. It is conceivable to suggest that the publicity stunt of the offers and Wexner's cutting of ties with Harvard was merely getting ahead of what they knew was coming in terms of Israel's planned genocide acceleration in response to October the 7th and how students would protest against their actions. Rather than Harvard being pressured to cut ties with such prominent supporters of Israel by the students, they decided to opportunistically cut ties, smearing Harvard in a way that they can blame the institution and call them woke, etc., and blame them for the students protesting, rather than address the real issue, the actions of the State of Israel. And not to forget, Jeffrey Epstein himself was also a huge donor to Harvard, a door Wexner likely opened for Epstein after he allowed much of his philanthropic activities for Epstein to deal with. What exactly were Wexner and Epstein financing at Harvard? In 1991, the New York Times reported that 4 men, including Epstein and billionaire and major Harvard donor Les Wexner, pledged to raise $2 million for the construction of the Harvard Hillel building. The building, which cost roughly $3.6 million in total, was completed in 1994. In 2003, the Crimson reported a plaque at Hillel listed Epstein as a major donor alongside Wexner and his wife Abigail. Henry A. Rozovsky, who is a Dean Emeritus of the Faculty of Arts and Science, was reportedly connected to Epstein via Wexner in 1991. Rozovsky later attended several discussions held in Epstein's Cambridge office. Commenting for the first time since the allegations against Epstein surfaced, Hillel Executive Director Rabbi Johann C. Steinberg wrote in an email that Hillel's records show Epstein himself never contributed funds to the project, and later went on to admit Epstein contributed a $50,000 donation at a Hillel fundraising dinner in 1991. This is all around the time Wexner gave Epstein power of attorney. One of the reasons in doing so was to help with his philanthropic efforts. And at the same time, Mega Group is founded. Let's just say a bunch of billionaires that just happen to be Jewish working and conspiring together to use or weaponize philanthropy to open doors, make connections, increase their influence, promote their brand, improve public relations, establish themselves as Jewish community leaders, and write off some of their taxes. With a prestigious university known around the world as being one of the best universities like Harvard, Wexner and Epstein having their names associated with it lent them some of that same elitism. Their association promotes the notion that they mingle in intellectual circles around the smartest minds. That would, to some degree, justify Epstein's smugness in the mind of some people. Epstein is pictured wearing a Harvard-branded hoodie. I think he liked to give the impression that he was a Harvard graduate. He wasn't.
College did you attend?
Cooper Union.
And did you get a degree from Cooper Union?
No, sir.
How many years were you in college?
I believe 2.
Would you study?
No one ever questions the motive behind the creation and continued presence of this Harvard Hillel building on campus. They are making a Jewish presence a permanent fixture on the Harvard campus. Hillels take their name from a Jewish religious leader, sage and scholar associated with the development of the Mishnah and the Talmud, and the founder of the House of Hillel. The presence of the Hillel also works as a form of soft power for the Israeli state, especially when you look at the programs Wexner is involved in, with the Wexner Israel Fellowship and the Birthright Israel program that pays for young Americans to take free trips to Israel, and the network Wexchange. One of the goals of having the Hillel is to isolate students who identify as Jewish from assimilation and integration with the wider community. Hillel's main focus seems to be on promoting paranoia of others and projecting the notion that non-Jewish students are anti-Semitic, and the world is out to get the Jewish students under their influence. Yet the Jewish students that they are targeting have the distinct privilege of being able to attend a prestigious university, We've also seen a smear campaign against students opposing genocide being labelled anti-Semitic in recent years. As Israel carry out their genocide, they are seemingly using Jewish students and the Hillel network around the world as political tools to promote this myth. Epstein visited Harvard University's campus more than 40 times after his 2008 sex crimes conviction, and was given his own office and granted keycard and passcode access to the Program for Evolutionary Dynamics Research Center, the same department he donated millions of dollars to. To cut ties with Harvard, the university has been under heavy attack in the media and has been financially attacked in several ways by the Trump administration, with funding being severely cut and waging a war on foreign students. Another interesting connection regarding this Harvard network of pro-Israel elites and the fallout of the October the 7th attacks involves former COO of Facebook and Meta platforms, Sheryl Sandberg. The pro-Israel billionaire released a propaganda film called Screams Before Silence, which is promoted as a, quote, documentary film on the sexual violence committed by Hamas, unquote, on October the 7th, 2023, but it is a total fraud and was completely debunked by the Electric Intifada. Israel has still not identified a single survivor of the alleged mass rapes of October the 7th, nor a single credible eyewitness. While Israel claims that many Israeli women and even some men were raped and sexually tortured in horrific ways on October the 7th before being killed, not one deceased victim has been identified either. The propaganda piece was used to justify Israel's ongoing genocide in Gaza. Sandberg has very strong ties to Epstein's buddy, Larry Summers. Summers is the former president of Harvard from 2001 to 2006. He is currently the Director of Business and Government at the Harvard Kennedy School, the same faculty that was greatly financed by the Wexner Foundation. Flight records introduced as evidence in the 2021 trial of Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell show that Summers flew on Jeffrey Epstein's private plane on at least 4 occasions, including once in 1998 when Summers was United States Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, and at least 3 times while Harvard president. A charity funded by Epstein also donated to the production of a PBS show hosted by Summers' wife and Harvard professor Elisa New. Summers continued to meet with Epstein more than a dozen times between 2013 and 2016 after Epstein's conviction and after Harvard began rejecting Epstein's donations. Sheryl Sandberg and Larry Summers have a mentor-mentee relationship beginning at Harvard. According to Sandberg, quote, he didn't just advise my thesis, he offered to advise my thesis. He didn't just help me get a job when I graduated, he hired me, unquote. Summers, as Treasury Secretary under Bill Clinton, hired Sandberg as his Chief of Staff. Their relationship is so important to Sandberg, she went back to Harvard to, quote, honour Larry's 70th birthday and his enduring legacy, unquote. So she isn't going to condemn him for his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein that he continued on post-conviction anytime soon. Some other interesting details regarding Summers and Sandberg revolve around Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. While Summers was president of Harvard, the Winklevoss twins requested a meeting with Summers in order to ask him to intervene on their behalf in an ongoing dispute they had with Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg had stolen their idea of a social networking platform after being hired as a programmer for their Harvard Connection project, using their ideas and source code to launch Facebook. Summers was depicted as rude and arrogant when dismissing the Winklevoss twins' complaints in the social network film, a portrayal Summers himself described as, quote, fairly accurate, unquote. The interviewer described Summers as looking suspiciously uncomfortable when the subject was brought up. Summers has publicly attacked and has had a vendetta against the twins ever since they exposed Summers' role in the situation with Zuckerberg. Suspicions of Summers' role in the Facebook saga only intensify, with his mentee Sandberg being appointed the company's COO uncontested in a position Zuckerberg had no formal search for, leaving a prominent position at Google in order to do so. Moving on from this, very kosher Harvard network. In another video published in September of 2017, I covered Wexner and Epstein's connections to then Harvard Felix Frankfurter Professor of Law, Alan Dershowitz. We'll start with his plea deal. Now, I'm sure many of you know, but Jeffrey Epstein got a very light sentence. Okay, so the person who agreed to this plea deal was Alexander Acosta, and it was a non-prosecution deal with Epstein through his attorney Alan Dershowitz a decade ago, rather than pursuing a federal indictment that Acosta's staff had advocated. So right there you've got a few red flags have got to go up of why Epstein wouldn't be tried for federal crimes, considering he's committed federal felonies. So Dershowitz has played a key role in negotiating a secret provision in Epstein's plea deal that immunized any potential co-conspirators from federal prosecution. So it's not just Epstein that's escaped federal prosecution. Any future or anybody linked to conspiring with Epstein is also immune from federal prosecution. The internet news outlet Gawker had the to expose the flight logs and the plea deal. This revealed a lot and opened a can of worms that Dershowitz did not want out and available to the general public. This is the source of Bill Clinton being exposed as being on the flight list. This is the same flight log list that exposed Dershowitz as far back as December 1997, flying with unidentified females and vaguely named Hazel Claire. Ghislaine Maxwell was also on the flight. Maxwell is accused of procuring underage girls for Epstein. Virginia's sworn affidavit also claims she engaged in sexual activity with Dershowitz while being underage. Now keep in mind, Virginia's affidavit was given before the flight logs and Black Book was ever released to the public. Now, in defense of these allegations, Dershowitz has made some interesting statements. He lied about Virginia Roberts making up claims that she alleged she had sex with Bill Clinton, which she never did. The flight logs cast serious doubt on public statements made by Dershowitz in regards to his wife. Dershowitz told the American lawyer he is loyal to his wife, who is always by his side, stating, "I've been married to the same woman for 28 years. She goes with me everywhere. People know that I won't argue a case or give a speech unless my wife travels with me. This is not the profile of someone who screws around." Yet his wife's name is absent from any flight logs while Dershowitz travelled with Epstein. And for someone who claims he can remember he travels everywhere with his wife for the past 28 years, he claims he has no idea who any of the girls on the flight logs he travelled with on Epstein's plane are. When Dershowitz was confronted by his wife's name being absent from the flight logs, he then backtracked, stating, "On occasions she's working or travels separately." He has claimed that he was introduced to him by Lady de Rothschild as an academic colleague. Yet in another statement he made regarding the first meeting with Epstein, he said, "It was just before Les Wexner's 60th birthday. My first substantive contact with him was to fly with him to Les Wexner's house to attend dinner with Shimon Peres and John Glenn." So way back in 1997, Dershowitz reveals this very interesting detail that the Prime Minister of Israel, Shimon Peres, John Glenn, Jeffrey Epstein and himself were so well acquainted with each other and with Les Wexner that they were invited to his 60th birthday party. Now this next clip is from an episode of the Antidote podcast with Greg McCarran and Jeremy Rothkashell, titled Epstein and Maxwell Revisited, Part 3.
Now, this is just blatantly false, actually, what Dershowitz... I'm almost positive that Pottinger was not Giuffre's original lawyer. Over now that they were able to get some traction. All right, back to the text, page 73 of Guilt by Accusation by Alan Dershowitz. Now, this is a quote. Quote, according to a sworn affidavit filed by Pottinger, quote, in the fall of 2014, I asked Mr. Boyes if the firm represented or if he knew Mr. Leslie Wexner. I told him that in the course of investigating facts related to Mr. Epstein's sex trafficking, Mr. Wexner had been identified as a close business associate and personal friend of Mr. Epstein. I told Mr. Boyes that there were assertions that Mr. Wexner had permitted Mr. Epstein to use and entertain on Mr. Wexner's yacht, and that Mr. Wexner was alleged to have had sex with one or more of Mr. Epstein's girls, including Miss Giuffre. Emphasis added. Unquote. The Pottinger affidavit disclosed that in December of 2014, precisely the same time I was being publicly accused in court papers by Giuffre of having had sex with her, Boyes' firm asked to meet with Wexner privately. As previously noted, Boyes and his partner then met with Wexner's lawyer and told him, according to the lawyer, that Giuffre was accusing him of sexual misconduct similar to that of which she was falsely accusing me. As I've said, both Wexner's wife and his lawyer used the word quote-unquote shakedown when telling me about Boyes' approach to Wexner. They also said the accusations were untrue. We don't know precisely what transpired at the secret meeting, but we do know from the records of the case that following the meeting, Wexner's name disappeared from court filings, and no public accusation of the kind made against me was ever leveled against Wexner by Boyes or his client. In the recently unsealed deposition of Giuffre taken in 2016, she accuses many prominent figures of having sex with her, but not Wexner, though she had early accused him in secret. Wexner's disappearance from the Epstein case is surprising, indeed shocking, in light of Wexner's wealth and long-term personal and business associations with Epstein. Maria Farmer, whose credibility is questionable, has sworn that she was assaulted by Epstein on Wexner's property. After Wexner hired her to work with him, and that, quote, Wexner's security staff refused to let her leave the property, unquote, where she was, quote, held against her will for 12 hours, unquote.
First of all, for Dershowitz to claim someone isn't credible is extremely hypocritical. Noam Chomsky, a man who debated Dershowitz at none other than the Wexner-financed Harvard Kennedy School of Government, no less, wrote an article in 2006 about Dershowitz's, quote, terrifying record of lies and deceit, unquote, before Epstein was ever charged with child sex offences and before Dershowitz was ever accused. So, as you would imagine, Dershowitz is wrong on a few points in his book. His instinct to attack the victim's credibility really explores this heartless scumbag and his self-interest. Maria Farmer reported what happened to her in the mid-90s. We also have the California-based model Alicia Arden, who claims Epstein assaulted her after luring her back to a Santa Monica hotel room in 1997. It's a clear pattern of behaviour. She was also hired by Epstein, not Wexner. Maria's sister Annie is also a victim of Maxwell and Epstein. Details Dershowitz got wrong. Dershowitz has even admitted that he received a massage with his underwear on, and that is just what he's willing to admit to. Clearly, Epstein facilitated for that to happen. Victims have repeatedly mentioned how they were trained to perform massages for Epstein and then perform sexual favours. Yet Dershowitz avoids this subject while making his comparison to Wexner in order to argue his innocence. Yet Dershowitz avoids this subject while making his comparison to Wexner in order to argue his innocence, implying that the victim is lying about Wexner, thus must be lying about him. Yet he doesn't address the fact that he admits being massaged by a girl of questionable age and how Epstein created that situation to happen, or he doesn't suggest that it is plausible for Epstein to have created the same situation or something similar for Wexner, who Dershowitz admits was closer to Epstein and we know had a relationship spanning decades. There is also the unfortunate coincidence for Dershowitz that in Epstein's little black book, scores of apparent underage victims in Florida, New Mexico, California, Paris and the United Kingdom are listed under the rubric of massage. So massage is being used as a code word for underage girls. There are also the explicit details that implicate Dershowitz. We also have the testimony of Bob Meister, who was put into a situation with Epstein, who brought 5 models to his property for his sexual entertainment. What Jeremy and I have pointed out as factual inaccuracies, Dershowitz has perpetuated. Any adequate and well-intentioned researcher would have known, especially if he were publishing a book. But aside from that, Dershowitz leaves out all of these key details that are inconvenient to his flimsy framing and arguments. Too bad they didn't hire me as their attorney. Another omission Dershowitz made was that he failed to mention that he threatened Guthrie that if she made public accusations against him, he would sue her for defamation in some pathetic ego-driven grandstanding response to the overwhelming backlash he had been unable to escape for his long history of terrible action.
I was with Alan Dershowitz multiple times. At least 6 that I can remember. Well, I was trafficked to Alan Dershowitz from Epstein. Epstein made me, essentially, forced me to have sex with him. Every time I was trafficked was at Epstein or Ghislaine's behest. He's denied being with me. Is one of us telling the truth? Yes. Is that person me? Yes.
Dershowitz tried to bully and goad Guthrie, who was a victim of Epstein, a woman that we found had her own psychological problems stemming from abuse and the fallout of it. She was a homeless girl with a limited education before being groomed. Guthrie didn't want this crap back in her life in the first place. It was Maxwell who defamed her and she stood up and defended herself. There is a real aspect of cruelty to dragging a victim of underage sex crimes through all of this and having to relive the trauma all day, every day in court. I'm sure it was a form of torture that depraved Dershowitz took pleasure in inflicting on Guthrie. In response to Dershowitz goading, she made the public accusations against Dershowitz. Big Mouth Dershowitz had no choice but to sue her. Dershowitz also claimed that Wexner's name disappeared from court filings made by Pottinger. This is a way of Dershowitz trying to trick the reader into thinking that allegations against Dershowitz also claimed that Wexner's name disappeared from court filings made by Pottinger. This is a way of Dershowitz trying to trick the reader into thinking that allegations against Dershowitz against Wexner were withdrawn, when Wexner's name was redacted from earlier releases of files from a case that Dershowitz was referring to. Wexner requested that his name was redacted at every opportunity, even after Judge Loretta Prescott ordered the unsealing of unredacted documents, with the exception of a few victims. Wexner's request was denied. Dershowitz is very deceptive, a dedicated liar, one might say. Dershowitz then used his false assertion to claim that Giuffre's legal team didn't believe her accusations against Wexner. Then he used this cloud of doubt he's created to cast doubt on the allegations against himself. It's truly despicable. In more recent years, our beacon of morality attempted to get a pardon for paedophile George Nader, and has stated that Ghislaine Maxwell deserved to be out of prison. He truly is a horrible human being. Let's get back to Mr. Wexner. So this next part mentions the Herbert N. Strauss house, the property in New York, where Prince Andrew was famously photographed opening the door, and former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak was pictured leaving, trying to disguise his identity. And in 1992, Wexner converted a private school in the Upper East Side into an enormous commercial residence. Epstein later bought that property in the wealthiest part of Manhattan. What has been discovered since this video was published conflicts with the information I stated, which is still on Leslie Wexner's Wikipedia page and is sourced from an October 2002 article published in New York Magazine. Some more recent information suggests Jeffrey Epstein moved into the house in 1995, at which he claimed to own it, although its registered ownership changed in 2011 from a trust connected to both Wexner and Epstein to a trust controlled by Epstein. So Epstein lied and was bragging that he was the owner to people. Placing the property in a trust makes sense when you know the true background of Epstein, and I should have thought of that. That is what Epstein did for his wealthy clients. He hid their assets in trusts, offshore, in tax havens. A good documentary on all of this is The Spider's Web, Britain's Second Empire. This detail also suggests that Wexner hadn't severed all ties by 2007, because they were both trustees of the Herbert N. Strauss property until 2011. I'm sure there's more to that story as well that we don't know about. Following the death of Epstein, the property was purchased in March 2021 by former Goldman Sachs executive Michael Daffy for $51 million, with proceeds from the sale going to the Epstein Victims Compensation Program. The Herbert N. Strauss property isn't the only connection the two had with property. Wexner joined forces with developer Jack Kessler as the 1990s approached to form the New Albany Company. Epstein, in New York Magazine, said he contributed a few $1 million of his own capital to the project as well. The article also quotes an investigator who called the groundwork of the New Albany construction, quote, a mess, before Epstein's arrival and subsequent cleanup. Throughout the 1990s, and as he took part in the New Albany Company's project, Epstein owned at least 2 properties in the town. One home in the 7500 block of King George Drive was an apparent gift from the billionaire to his financial manager. Documents from Franklin County Recorder showed Epstein received the property in a trust in 1990. NBC4 also obtained Franklin County Auditor records which showed he later bought the house for $364,000 and resigned from the trust in 1995. Leslie's wife, Abigail Wexner, took Epstein's place as trustee, but auditor record also showed Epstein sold his home to the billionaire's wife for $0 in 2007. Epstein's second New Albany property would be the focal point of a civil lawsuit with claims of sexual assault. He bought the home at 5025 East Dublin, Granville Road, for $3.5 million from JW and CPK & Co., a Kessler and Wexner company, according to Franklin County Auditor records. The building is around a mile away from Wexner's mansion and massive plot of land. Epstein's work on the New Albany project puts Epstein in the location in the time period when Maria Farmer's allegations that she was held hostage for months and assaulted by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell while working as an artist in residence in 1996. Epstein sold the house in 1998 for $8 million to HHD&B LLC. Business records from Ohio Secretary of State showed this entity has the same mailing address as the New Albany Company. So how did the two men meet in the first place? We know that Epstein became Wexner's financial manager in 1987. Well, Wexner met Epstein sometime around 1986. They were introduced by Wexner's close friend and insurance mogul, Robert Meister, whose firm handled the insurance for the Limited. He was a great bullshit artist, Meister said, referring to Epstein. People who knew Epstein remarked at his savant-like skills at impressing powerful older men. Quote, Jeffrey was a flatterer, unquote, who met Epstein in the 1980s. Quote, Jeffrey would call me every day and say, "Oh, you're so brilliant, you're the best," said interior designer Robert Couturier. Epstein's friend Stuart Pivor, a founder of the New York Academy of Arts, said Epstein's magnetism was almost impossible to resist. He was that good of a con man, unquote. Said Epstein's magnetism was almost impossible to resist. Quote, if you had hundreds of millions of dollars and you knew Jeffrey, there's a high likelihood that you'd give it to him. He was that good of a con man, unquote. In hindsight, Meister suspects Epstein aggressively cultivated him in the hope that Meister would open doors to his billionaire friends like Wexner. Not long after Epstein met Meister, Epstein invited Meister to play racquetball and started turning up in the steam room at his gym while he was using it. Quote, I'd be having a steam and Epstein would come in, unquote. Epstein asked Meister to introduce him to Wexner. Epstein falsely said he had learned that Wexner's money manager was stealing from him. Epstein, a self-described financial, quote, bounty hunter, offered to help recover the funds. It was convincing enough that Meister arranged a meeting for Epstein at Wexner's home in Aspen. Epstein is such a liar, Meister said. In Wexner's 2019 letter to his foundation, he wrote that he hired Epstein because friends, quote, recommended him as a knowledgeable financial professional, unquote. Soon after introducing Wexner and Epstein, Meister started hearing disturbing stories about Epstein's sexual proclivities. Think of whatever the worst thing anyone could do is, and Epstein did them all, Meister said. The breaking point came when Epstein showed up unannounced at Meister's Park Avenue apartment with 5 models for Meister's sexual entertainment. Epstein thought he was bringing me a gift, Meister recalled. I told him, get the f*** out and I never want to see you again. Meister, whose estimation of Epstein had done a total 180, gave his friend a general warning about his character. Meister says he and his wife, Wendy, warned Wexner to stay away from Epstein. We begged him, don't get involved, Meister recalled. It was too late. Wexner had hired Epstein as his financial advisor. He thought Epstein was brilliant, Meister said. Epstein claimed he could discern hidden patterns in financial markets, but his true money-making gift was reading people. He surely recognized Wexner was deeply lonely. Business was Leslie's life, said Wexner's childhood friend, Peter Halliday, whose Ohio bank prepared the Limited's first stock offering. Wexner was born in Dayton, Ohio, in 1937 to Russian Jewish parents who worked in the garment business. At the time Wexner met Epstein, the Limited had an annual revenue of $3 billion. Despite the success, Wexner remained little known outside Ohio. At the time Wexner met Epstein, the Limited had an annual revenue of $3 billion. Despite the success, Wexner remained little known outside Ohio. Meister recalled a party in Aspen when Donald Trump walked up to Wexner and said, "Nice to meet you. How did you get so f***ing rich?" Wexner and Epstein soon became virtually inseparable. Les knows everything about me. He knows every experience I've had, Epstein once told a friend. Wexner's public image continued to grow after hiring Epstein. A 1989 Boston Globe profile that detail Wexner's rise reported that his September the 1st diary entry that year read, "I finally like myself." Jerry Merritt, the limited security chief, was unnerved by the sudden friendship. Wexner's physical appearance changed. A former Victoria's Secret's executive recalled Wexner dyed his hair. He hired a live-in personal trainer and adopted a new wardrobe. Les would wear the tightest jeans you saw. "I don't know how he didn't cut off blood supply to his private parts," the former executive said. Wexner's colleagues referred to his look as chairman's casual. According to sources, Epstein took an interest in Wexner's romantic life. In 1985, New York magazine put Wexner on the cover with the headline, "The Bachelor Billionaire." Wexner dated, but the relationships didn't tend to last. Around the time Wexner met Epstein, Wexner broke up with a Columbus woman. According to sources, Epstein showed up at her house with a multi-million-dollar check and told her to stay away from Wexner. The friendship vexed Wexner's mother, Bella. Sources said she wanted Les to settle down and get married. Bella hated Epstein. She was so blunt, Merritt said. Around 1990, Wendy Meister introduced Wexner to a corporate lawyer in her late 20s named Abigail Koppel, who worked in the London office of Davis Polk, the Limited's outside law firm. Abigail was so secretive about it, a friend from London recalled. She said, "Don't tell anyone. I don't want to jinx it." But Epstein stayed very much in the picture. He reportedly arranged Wexner and Koppel's prenuptial agreement and was one of 50 attendees at their January 1993 wedding ceremony. Wexner even gave Epstein Bella's seat on the board of the Wexner Foundation. Epstein sometimes portrays himself as a surrogate son to a lonely billionaire. He told some people he was Wexner's fixer. Alan Dershowitz said that when he became Epstein's criminal lawyer in 2007, Epstein boasted that Wexner would not testify against him. Flight logs show that Dershowitz flew with Epstein to attend Wexner's 60th birthday bash. Another connection both men share is to the powerful nexus of the illustrious board of Hollinger International, the company that was once a global newspaper empire which published the Daily Telegraph, Chicago Sun-Times, the Jerusalem Post, the Canadian National Post, London's Spectator magazine, and hundreds of community newspapers in North America before controversy erupted over the sale of some of the company's assets in the mid-2000s. Despite the attention of Jeffrey Epstein, his crimes and political connections, it seems that only I have highlighted the significant connections between the powerful men who were on the board of Hollinger International and Jeffrey Epstein's little black address book. Looking at the board, you wouldn't be surprised to find that Conrad Black promoted a notably right-wing brand of Zionism. Black was a media baron that seemingly took off where Robert Maxwell left off. Under Black's tenure, the foreign pages of the Daily and Sunday Telegraphs contained a notable absence of clear critical reporting of Israel's deadly methods of suppressing Palestinians. The comment pages were even more extreme. In the National Post in 1993, Black described Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat as vile and primitive. Black's Jewish wife, Barbara Amiel, whose name is listed alongside Conrad's in Epstein's address book, was prominently featured in Black's publications, which she was compensated extremely well for. One of her more notable articles, a 2-page spread in the Telegraph, compared the Palestinians to animals. Amiel's journalism became known for her ferocious defense of Israel and as an opponent of the BBC. She wrote in 2003 that while it is too late to kill Arafat, the conflict in the Middle East is not amenable to a peaceful solution and can only be solved by the total victory of one side, either by the Arabs annihilating the Israelis or the Israelis being forced to use every means, not excluding nuclear weapons, to defend themselves. She was accused by a former editor of the Sunday Telegraph of writing enragingly narrow-minded and logic-choppingly unpersuasive apologies for Israel, and of all of Black's neoconservative columnists as the worst of the lot. So deluded by her own pro-Israel bias and unwavering support for the disastrous war on terror, she actually accused the BBC of relentless anti-Israel and anti-American biases. You can really see how the Wexner analysis influenced the talking points in Black's media empire. If you want to know where all the Hollinger's investors' money went, look no further than Lady Black, who used the company as her own personal piggy bank. She told Vogue that her extravagance knows no bounds. In her London home she displayed a fur closet, a sweater closet, and a closet so crammed with evening gowns that the overflow has to be kept in yet more closets downstairs. There were dozens of Hermes Birkin bags, at least 30 handbags made by Renaud Pellegrino, and over 100 pairs of Manolo Blahnik shoes, each costing between £250 and £800. Amiel's excesses also extended to a large collection of jewellery. It is always best to have two planes, because however well one plans ahead, one always finds one is on the wrong continent, she said. Only a few hundred women in the world can afford to dress like Mrs. Black, wrote Margaret Went in a November 2003 issue of Toronto Globe and Mail, and Mrs. Black may not be among them. It really begs the question why Amiel wasn't implicated in her husband's crimes. These British socialites seem such delightful people, especially in this circle, Ghislaine Maxwell and Barbara Amiel. Prior to finding her meal ticket in Conrad Black, the publisher Lord Wiedenfeld became Amiel's friend and for a time her lover, despite being 21 years older. Wiedenfeld's details were also revealed to be in Epstein's address book, and he was also a board member at Hollinger. I covered Wiedenfeld's role as a master networker for the Zionist movement throughout his life. He was a key figure in the neocon war on terror apparatus. His company, Wiedenfeld and Nicholson, published Benjamin Netanyahu's book Terrorism: How the West Can Win, Michael Gove's Celsius 77, both war on terror propaganda books. He was also the publisher of Lolita, the title book that inspired the name of Jeffrey Epstein's plane, the Lolita Express. He was also a good friend of the Rothschild family. Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, of course, was the one who introduced Jeffrey Epstein to Alan Dershowitz. Her husband, Sir Evelyn Rothschild, was another name in Epstein's Black Book, and Hollinger board member. He too was very much part of the same interesting network as Wiedenfeld. Same can be said with Henry Kissinger, who is one of the most significant figures in the world of the last 80 years, a true architect of globalization that has consolidated corporate power around the world and has coincided with the decline of the left-wing parties in Western democracies and weakening of the labour movement. His foreign policies helped to craft the endless war, all-American tradition. No segment in a video can really do justice to the topic of Heinz Kissinger. I have covered some of the lesser known about details regarding Kissinger. And then we have another Henry, a Marie-Josie Kravis, while billionaire Henry is a co-founder of one of the world's leading investment firms, KKR & Co., and is listed in Epstein's address book. Marie served on the board of Hollinger and is a member of the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group, the same group Wiedenfeld, Evelyn de Rothschild, Henry Kissinger, and Conrad Black, July 2025, mention that a book was compiled of letters from friends of Jeffrey Epstein for his 50th birthday. Wexner, Dershowitz, and Donald Trump are all said to have contributed letters. Thank you for watching. This has been John Swin. It's at JON_SWINN on X. The website is exposethenemy.com. all one word. Also, please join the YouTube channel to support my work. Thanks to the 4 people that do so. Take care and have a great day.